Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for another indie comic review. And in this indie comic review I am covering King Spawn issue 3, which has actually been quite interesting, and also the first issue of Gunslinger Spawn. And I must admit, both of these covers are pretty darn good. So, time to jump into the first one, to which I'll be reviewing. So, as we jump into the first one, being King Spawn issue 3, I really like the cover here, and I do believe it actually works in relation to the story, because we've got the main character of Spawn here looking over the city, but it's also got a somewhat old look to it, just in some places, to which I gave the cover a 7 out of 10, and I do feel it works with the story, even though something very interesting does happen in the story. So now it's time to jump into the next part. Let's have a look at the art, to which we'll have a look at the beginning, middle and the end. Now this is some art around the beginning, to which we've actually got Spawn still on the case in regards to what happened in the first issue, even though that should have been brought up in this. But you know what, I'm not too worried about it. It's still keeping some form of consistency, and we get to see a little bit more of sort of like what's connected to the past or what's happening in the present. Now to the middle, and as you can see here, Spawn's getting very irate at a certain group of people, which is back to the Psalm 137 group. And how they're connected into all this. And last but not least, towards the end, where he also goes up against one of his villains, Kincaid. For the art, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the story. This story basically consisted of some references linking back to issue 321 of Spawn, something I'm going to have to pick up because, well, obviously the writer cares about good storytelling. In regards to time, we didn't get any indication of what time of day, or whereabouts in the time of day this was taking place, or if there was any time limit of any sort. Even though that wasn't in there, I still enjoyed the story. When we move into the area of locations, there was of course the USA, but we also had Uganda turn up in this, and that was quite interesting too, because Uganda plays a big part in regards to the story. I think Uganda has a part in regards to the Psalm 137 group, but we've not fully delved into that yet. The cast of characters consisting of Spawn, Terry, we of course had Billy Kincaid, who was one of Spawn's first villains. We also had Mark and Simon, who was the young child at the end. For this, I must admit, it was reasonably good. I enjoyed what I read. I'm looking forward to the next issue. And for that, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Now it's time to jump into Gunslinger Spawn. So as we approach Gunslinger Spawn, how do I rate this cover, and does this cover work with what happens inside the story. Surprisingly enough, this cover does actually work with what is happening inside the story. So no false advertisement here. For that, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10 for this first issue. The next is the art. So we're going to have a look at the art around the beginning, middle and the end. There are a few side stories in this as well, but all done by the same writer. So we've got the first story, then the second story, and I think also a third story. So this starts us off with Gunslinger Spawn coming into the area. And of course we meet this person by the name of Taylor. Take note, this character Taylor also has a connection with something that is happening at the end of the story. I won't say what yet. So this is some of the art around the beginning. This is some of the art around the middle, which is in the second story. And in this middle part, we're actually given somewhat of part of a backstory around the character of like some of the events that he's been a part of in the Spawn history. And correction there, it's not 2 to 3 stories, it's actually 4 stories in this. So, and as you can see here, this is some of the art, again back in regards to the Gunslinger's past. And we somewhat see a familiar looking face. Even though it's not actually Taylor, it looks to me that it might be a descendant of Taylor. But he's also young too. This is a little bit more from this particular story. And as you can see, for the internal art, I gave this a 7.5 out of 10. Moving into the story, of course, there are things that I personally enjoy in my storytelling, and let's get off with the first things first. Did the storyteller bring any comic references? And sure enough, they did. And they also give us a lookout in regards to an upcoming issue being issue 3. But we also get Spawn Universe issue 1. And the thing is, I've not read the first issue of Spawn Universe issue 1, so I might have to pick that up through my LCS. Next is, do we get a time frame of anything that covers some certain events that happen in this story? We do, when it relates back to the past. When we're not in the present, we get the time of August in 1853, which connects to a Mexican-American war event. The location, of course, taking place in the US. And the cast of characters consisting, of course, this Gunslinger Spawn, to which we don't know their name yet, but you know what? I like that at the moment. I presently like that at the moment. I'd be surprised if we actually find out the Gunslinger's name in maybe issue 2 or 3. And of course the character of Taylor, who we saw at the beginning. And this is why I seem to think Taylor is actually related to the very first young person that we see this Gunslinger Spawn meets. Because they have somewhat the same appearance. Yes, they're younger in age, but as for Taylor himself, you can see he looks a little bit older. He almost looks like a mirror image to that ancestor. And it almost feels like this Gunslinger Spawn might even owe a debt of gratitude to him, for which I gave this story a 7 out of 10. Now, I think that's pretty good for this first issue. And I think I'm going to have to check out the second issue. Well, until then, please don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's keep it colourful.